Meredith, you're on mute.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that because I'm finished now. Okay, I'll try again. Yeah, my father's older sister, Lou, her husband bought this house in 1941. It was built in 1912. I spent part of every summer of my life down here. And so I'm just going to start with a childhood memory and then go through some of the poems in the book to give you a sense of what the place in this family meant to me. So 2 blocks from the beach, a weathered gray lattice-woven fence wraps around the backyard of sandy soil and bristly grass. My bathing suit chafes ocean sand as my bottom rubs back and forth against the rough plank of the swing. Every arc up, I tickle the blue hydrangeas. Aunt Ray pops out of the shower, terry cloth sarong, threatening to show all of her old maid pinkness as she lifts her arms, pinning her swimsuit to the sagging line. Uncle Joe's always at work in the summer office. Aunt Lou has dibs for the shower, then my dad, her baby brother favorite, Mom scurrying to be helpful. Me, I'm always last, blazing in the late August sun, snug in these perfect days that will last forever. Sometimes it would be nice to be 10 again. I don't want to go through any of the rest of it, but 10 would be kind of nice. When I started to clean up the house, as Susanna mentioned, it was cluttered. My cousin, who was their child, had been hoarding, and she died suddenly. And among other things, there was just reams of letters, telegrams, all kinds of things that they had never thrown anything out for, I think, 50 years. So my uncle was a newspaper man, and this is a slightly edited piece of one of the many letters that he wrote. To my daughter, to his daughter from a guy named Joe, annotated by me. Like most stories, it will start once upon a time. This guy named Joe got himself a chance to work on the New York Journal-American. Spot opens in New England territory. I open my big mouth and I'm on my way to Yankee Land, all expenses paid plus salary. This was the Cats, doing swell, having the time of my life, not a care in the world. Then it happened. A female at the paper crossed my path. Funny thing about the friends this Lou had, including the bosses. They kept on telling and advising her, nix on this guy, Joe. And what I discovered, it may have had a little something to do with the fact that he was 30 and married and she was 17. So the next poem is To Have and Have Not. Here's looking at you, kid. Men said things like that. You know how to whistle, don't you? Just put your lips together and blow. We know a woman said that, at least in the movies. The camera was there, but she didn't write the script. They were scripted for her. She's just a kid. He's been around. See the rakish angle of his fedora, how his cigarette dangles. She keeps talking and thinks he's saying something. Most of my poems in this book are free verse, but this next one is a villanelle, so you'll hear the repeating forms. Echo of the Undertow. Another letter from a guy named Joe. Lies, jailbait, sorry, a weave. Secrets, silence, the undertow. Battering and plaintive echo. Love us, don't leave, don't leave. Another letter from a guy named Joe. Naming, rhyming, endearments flow, sculpting lives. What can you believe? Secrets, silence, the undertow, yielding more than you want to know. Follow the rack line and retrieve another letter from a guy named Joe. Wed who, when, blanks in his bio, this uncle you adored. Now you grieve, secrets, silence, the undertow, traceries of sea grist below, ebbing time, no more make-believe. Another letter from a guy named Joe. Secrets, silence, the undertow. First death. The phone rang. I called to my parents. Don't answer, Uncle Joe is dead. But they did, and he was. I was 16, young to lose someone I loved so much, though only a year younger than my aunt when he pursued her. How could he be in a casket? When I couldn't bear being at the wake, I went back to the house for comfort. Miss Ellen, my aunt's housekeeper, had come out of retirement to help. She'd always talked to me like I was a grown-up. She told me not to grieve. She'd been talking to my uncle, and he was just fine. Uh-huh, I said, and fled to my shoreline haven to cry in my dress-up clothes amidst the glee of happy surf skippers, so muddled. I had never known such sadness. I knew the nuns were wrong. He and I would not be meeting again in heaven. This next poem is called My Aunt's Blue Velvet Robe. And one of the many things I found cleaning out the house. And the first two lines of it are in her voice. And so I'm going to do that thing whenever somebody else's voice comes up, because I know you can't hear the italics in my voice. My aunt's blue velvet robe. Oh, my soul and body, it's noon. I'm still in my robe. We were building a family tree. She who I wanted to be when I grew up, who knew how to say and show love. Everything about her and her home seemed perfect. 30 years later, I'm wearing the robe, found when cleaning out her house, my harbor then and now. Found along with secrets of devotion, deceit, and sorrow. The robe is wearing out, nap thinning to translucence. I know I will have to let it go. Some of you have actually seen that robe when you've been in the house with me, but it's gone now. The next one is about my cousin, what I kind of imagined how her life had shrunk. She ended up living in this house by herself for many years after my aunt died. Much too much house for one person. And anyway, behind the looking glass, her she who was blossoms a ghostly presence in the antique armoire's clouded mirror, Mars of time dissolved, bringing back the seeking face of a girl who wanted and feared her wanting an equal measure. She crosses the bedroom, climbing alone under the duvet, shivering on cold cotton in the empty seaside air. Fragile glimmer of lost beauty, youth surfacing only to haunt, gone, more to be mourned, desire unbidden, unspoken, too late, tonight wanting only the veil of sleep, the shadow self. This next poem's called Listing, and it's going to have another section after description. That's my cousin's voice to me over several years. Listing. Herring goes home, laughing gulls leave. She taught me that. Beach walk talk of skate case, piper, plover, wind blow, razor, soft or piss clam, her boundless almanac of fact. Stashes of mini spiral notebooks recording out-of-state license plates, cards sent, received, books read, miles walked, weather, medications, surgeries, then her jumbled last year's accounts. When are you coming? Your room's ready. I got new sheets and towels. It took me 2 days to wax the kitchen floor. Why are you 10 minutes early? You don't want to stay at the house, do you? I stayed away most of a year. She hid, dying. I'm back, sorting and sorting. I read her lists. The winter beach is strewn with unnamed bone and castings. The never listed will inherit our home. And the never listed was because my uncle had family that nobody knew about. But you have to go to the book to get the whole story. Sorry. So I'm just going to read this last poem. It took me a long time because my previous book was called Tenement Threnody. So I grew up in a 3-room apartment in New York City in Upper Manhattan in a really Irish neighborhood. And then I'd come down to this place every summer, which was like a whole other world. But as a kid, you don't know that. It was just great. I loved it. But it took me a long time before I could say it was my house, to label it that way. So this poem is the last poem in the book. It's called Uncle George's Fish. Uncle George was actually my great uncle. He was an architect and what he would called a weekend painter. So Uncle George's Fish. An oceanscape painted by one well-to-do relative given to another, coveted by my mother, she of the poor side, holy water side. Flat rocks, stiff waves and bubbles ought to tell her, look, this is a fish out of water. Gills panting off the canvas, one-dimensional rocks and wilted seaweed. She saw art in a substantial frame. Abject hints for one of her own unheeded. When grown and finally debt-free, I bought her a quick-stroke seascape at a Cape Cod shop. Check marks of gull, slinky spirals of wave, hung over the sofa with pride, where it stayed after she died, till it hung by Dad's nursing home bed. At his death, we left it there, while Uncle George's Fish still hovers on the silk-papered parlor wall of the seaside house that's come to be mine. I can dispose of this fish as I will. My daughter says the fish belongs on our wall. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. So I told you all it was going to be about more than the house. I'm in awe of how you're able to make use of all that material instead of being so overwhelmed by the material that you just pile it up and throw it out. So yes.
Yeah, it only took me 15 years to write the book. There's really nothing much to it.